Good evening, and welcome to tonight's Town Talk. I'm City Manager Scott Neal. Guided by feedback from residents, the Edina City Council and staff put forward a $71 million investment plan for Braemar Park and Arena and Fred Richards Park that would be pursued in two phases. Voters approved a 0.5% local option sales tax in November of 2020 to finance $39.3 million of Phase 1. Phase 1 will provide new amenities and upgrades at Braemar Park and Arena and transform Fred Richards Park into a dynamic, multifaceted city park. If approved this November, Phase 2 would provide $31.7 million to support the expansion of Braemar Arena. Tonight's Town Talk will cover the proposed expansion of Braemar Arena. Park and Rec Director Perry Vetter will speak for about 30 minutes. After his presentation, he'll take some questions. Those who would like to ask a question can call 786-496-5601 with conference ID 0515851. Press star 1 on your telephone keypad when you are ready to ask a question during the part of the event. An operator will mute your line and place you into a queue until it is your turn to speak. We will end tonight's Town Talk when there are no more questions or 8 p.m., whichever is first. However, you can continue to ask questions and make comments online at bettertogetheredina.org for the next week. The online conversation closes Tuesday, August 29th. Now I would like to formally introduce Perry. Perry joined the City of Edina staff as Park and Rec Director in 2019, overseeing our programming, park maintenance and forestry, recreation enterprises, and Edina liquor operations. He has a staff of 74 full-time employees and up to 500 seasonal employees, and an operating budget of approximately $33 million. After earning a degree in recreation management from the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse and an internship with Three Rivers Park District, Perry began his career with the City of Minnetonka. He worked there for 21 years in 3 different departments in 7 different positions, most recently as the Assistant City Manager and Director of Administrative Services before coming to Edina. Please join me in welcoming Perry to tell us more about the plans for Braemar Park. Perry.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for watching this Town Talk on the Braemar Arena expansion plan. Again, my name is Perry Vetter. I am the Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Edina. We're going to go over tonight a presentation on the reinvestment plan for the Braemar Arena, and I'll touch on items on Braemar Park as well that are included in that. As City Manager Neal indicated, this plan was guided by feedback from residents, city leaders, and staff throughout the last several years to put forward an investment plan. Last November, voters approved a 0.5% sales tax to finance Phase 1. Phase 1 included upgrades to Braemar Park and infrastructure for Braemar Arena, and to transform Fred Richards Park, the former 43-acre golf course, into a dynamic community park. The City Council has already taken a few steps to work on Phase 1. They've authorized the wetland banking and professional services for Fred Richards Park, and staff has also started schematic design for the initial Braemar Park investments, the natural resource enhancements, trail improvements, especially mountain biking, and upgrades to the Courtney Field and Playground Complex. There is an open house for the Braemar Park schematic design on Wednesday, September 6th. That is at the backyard rink at 7 p.m. So again, Wednesday, September 6th, at the backyard rink of Braemar Arena at 7 p.m. So for Phase 2, this would provide $31.7 million to support the expansion of Braemar Arena. That would include the addition of a 4th indoor sheet of ice, an expanded lobby, additional parking, and importantly, a safer drop-off and exit zone out of the building. So the timeline of these projects is also very crucial to why we're discussing them again this evening. This started with feedback starting to be generated in 2016 when the initial ideas for developing master plans for Braemar Park and Fred Richards Park began. Those discussions continued into 2017, and approvals were found in 2018 and 2019. The city, with an authorization from the City Council, extended a resolution of support to the Minnesota State Legislature beginning in 2020, and that was to propose a local option sales tax referendum to fund Phase 1. In 2020, that was a very abbreviated legislative session, and that request was held over into 2021, where the Phase 1 language was approved. In 2022, the arena expansion and other amendments to the master plan began to take shape. The Minnesota State Legislature also reviewed that request again and authorized Phase 2 language for 2023, and that's where we're here this evening. So it was a long process for us to gain that legislative approval. However, Phase 1, as we indicated, was on the ballot, and Edina voters approved both questions for Braemar Park and Arena and Fred Richards. And now, in 2023, this November, Phase 2, to expand the arena, will be on the ballot. So what was included in Phase 1? That was improvements that we identified through our capital improvement planning to ensure that Braemar Arena, already at 58 years old, receives critical infrastructure repairs, upgrades for our operations and mechanical maintenance items. Some of those items include our refrigeration systems, keeping that ice at the perfect temperature for our skaters, heating and boiler systems, and to repair our roof infrastructure. That Phase 1 would also rehabilitate some of our locker rooms and our restrooms. And lastly, and probably most importantly, and that's ensuring that Braemar Arena has the upgrades it needs to ensure accessibility is there for everyone that attends, and that meets ADA accessibility guidelines. So Phase 2, what will be on the ballot for November 7th? And that would address the number of rinks, the safety issues around exiting and entrancing into the building, so the drop-off and pickup area, the lobby area, and the parking challenges. If expanded, Braemar Arena would allow Edina athletes and participants to be able to stay a little closer to home to enjoy more ice time and support more regional tournaments and events. So what are some of the challenges at the arena? Why is this plan appropriate? Well, Braemar is one of the busiest ice arenas in the entire state. We host around 500,000 visitors each year. Based on the ice time sales and the teams and athletes that participate at Braemar, we know they come from over 158 other Minnesota communities, and also from 12 different states. And that's important to note. Braemar Arena is very regional in its draw, and why it's eligible for the local option sales tax funding mechanism. Due to high demand, Edina residents travel across the Twin Cities and participate in hockey and skating activities outside of Braemar Arena. Our local Edina Hockey Association actually buys anywhere from 750 to 850 additional hours of ice time outside of Braemar Arena to support their athletes. So with the critical infrastructure needs that were passed in Phase 1, we want to continue to replace all those items that we mentioned in a more holistic fashion to ensure that the expansion of the arena also has redundant systems, proper heating and electrical and ventilation, and it's all planned and designed as one project. And that's why Phase 2 is very important. So, what would the plan include exactly? So the plan would be to remove the existing south rink. The south rink runs on a north to south axis. So once that rink would be removed, 2 additional rinks would be constructed where that rink is, and they would be on a west to east axis. We would create a larger lobby, which would mitigate crowding. If you've ever been there, as one game ends and another practice begins, you know how crowded that lobby can get. If you've been there and tried to navigate athlete pickup with drop-off, with entering into the arena, you know that the improvements for safety and functionality of the parking lot and drop-off area is critical. In addition, this would add about 100 new parking stalls as well. So on your screen currently is a layout of the Braemar Arena, looking down from overhead. On the western side of your screen, on the aerial photo, is Highway 169. On the east side of that photo is down Braemar Boulevard towards the Gulf Dome. As you can see in the graphic on the right-hand side of the screen, shows the existing rinks. So on the west side is our historic West Arena. On the north side is the existing outdoor backyard rink, the existing East Arena, and then on the bottom right is the existing South rink. So the current plan then would be to remove that South rink as I indicated, construct a new entrance and lobby, rebuild 2 new ice rinks, so then there would be a total of 4 indoor rinks, improve the drop-off and pickup area, and create 2 levels of structured parking. The existing base layer of parking that supports the South Arena now, and an above structured parking, which would also service those rinks. In addition to this expansion plan, when this idea originally came up, we also decided to do an operational analysis for this rink as well. And that was included in our report when we amended the Braemar Master Plan to include this. We had an independent consultant, Ballard King, look at and interview many of our stakeholders at the arena. Through their analysis, we found that an additional 4th rink could also be self-sufficient and help the bottom line budget of Braemar Ice Arena. So that net revenue from a 4th sheet could range anywhere from an additional $110,000 to $240,000 per year. That was based off of interviews with our stakeholders and looking at year-round. We often joke in the ice arena business that you can never have enough ice arenas from December through February from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. However, our analysis made sure that a 4th sheet would be financially viable all year long. That was very important to us as staff to ensure that any expansion also included a financially responsible business plan. Here's another view of it as well, kind of an overhead looking back. As you can see, the expanded lobby in gray, and in light blue, the 2 new sheets of ice. Again, most importantly, is also a safer drop-off and pickup area for visitors and athletes. So, about the cost and financing plan of this. So, when Phase 1 was approved, the City Council said that if they did approve that, we would seek Phase 2 with the same 0.5% sales tax for Braemar. So if approved on November 7th, $31.7 million would be funded by the existing 0.5% sales tax that went into place this April of 2023. If it is approved, that sales tax rate would not increase or extend beyond the initial 19-year authorization. So the local option sales tax that went into place would expire when enough sales tax revenue has been collected, or 19 years, whichever comes first. So why a local option sales tax? According to the University of Minnesota, over half of the 0.5% sales tax is paid by non-residents who make purchases within the City of Edina. Non-residents would contribute about $17.1 million towards the cost of the arena expansion. If parks and arena projects were funded through a property tax increase, the cost burden would fall to Edina residents who own commercial and residential properties. We've also been asked, why not charge non-residents more at the arena? Our most ice reservations are from our Edina-based stakeholders. We often say, we don't have a rate for when 2 additional teams from out of town play at one of our Edina-based tournaments. So there's no mechanism for us to charge non-residents more through our ice arena primetime costs, which range currently from $200 per hour to $262 per primetime. So we don't have any special rates when non-residents play at Edina. So some clarifications. So if the outcome of the referendum does not change anything that was approved last November, so the investments in the Braemar Park and the arena infrastructure and Fred Richards last year will go on regardless of the outcome of this November's election. Again, the sales tax rate beyond the 0.5% approved by voters, that rate does not change. And the duration cannot be extended, so there would be a maximum of 19 years. So, if the referendum passes, an additional $31.7 million would be invested to expand the arena. It would be funded, as indicated, by that 0.5% approved in November of 2022. If it is approved, design work and project work would then begin. If the referendum does not pass, it's very unclear if there's a viable solution outside of a sales tax to fund a Braemar Arena expansion. So if it does not pass, we would have to look at other options and re-engage our residents and stakeholders about priorities for the arena. So your role. Besides watching this evening, you can make your voice heard. Election Day is Tuesday, November 7th, 2023, and early voting will begin on Friday, September 22nd, 2023. For more information, you can visit our project website. That is edinaatplay.org. On the project website, you can find a lot of information. You can find more information about these expansion plans, the needs that the plan would address, cost and tax impacts. You'll find information on how to vote and what the ballot language would be. And we also have a frequently asked questions section for more information about the arena expansion plan. So with that, I believe that concludes my presentation, and we would begin by taking any questions.
Great, thank you, Perry, for all that. Perry is now going to stand for questions. If you have a question, call 786-496-5601 with conference ID 0515851 and #. Press *1 on your telephone keypad when you are ready to ask a question. An operator will mute your line and place you into the queue until it is your turn to speak. And we will wrap this up when there are no further questions, or 8 o'clock, whichever comes sooner. Do we have any questions yet?
We sure do, Manager Neal.
Okay.
Operator, will you please unmute the line of our first caller? And caller, please begin by stating your full name and address for the record.
Yes, Mr. Vetter, my name is Lori Groats, and I have a question about your business plan for the expansion. There will be additional operational costs and additional staff. In your budget plan, how much is in there for the additional operational costs, and how many additional new staff will be hired, and what would the budget be, please, for the new staff?
Perry, so summarizing the question, bigger operation, more ice rinks, bigger building probably equals more staff. And I know you've done some work on this, so what can you say to that?
Thank you to the inquiry on that, because that is a very important question, and one that was extremely important to staff in regards to how can we ensure that if we do take on a fourth sheet, we can ensure that we have adequate revenue. What would those expenses be, and what could that mean to that? So that was actually part of our analysis that we had Ballard King conduct independently for the city, and it was presented to the City Council as part of the master plan amendment. For more information on that and the details, that was May 17th, I believe, 2022 was when that occurred.
Is it on our Edina at Play website? Or can we put it on?
I believe our operational analysis is or can be put on the website. Okay. It was part of our council packet.
Okay.
Ballard King, when they looked at what those revenues could be for a 4-sheet of ice. We looked at, again, not just primetime ice, but the year over. And we anticipated about $545,000 in revenue for a 4-sheet of ice, of what that would generate per year. And we also asked them to say, okay, what would that take from an expense side of things to manage that? And we had them look at maintenance staff, Zamboni drivers, part-time staff, what those benefits would be, Zamboni expenses, custodial, kind of all the things, our operating costs, what that would be. And they came up with a baseline expense line of about $292,000. So that would equate to about a $240,000 net revenue by that. Okay. And as staff, we were concerned and we said, you know what if that means we have to hire additional staff? What happens if we do anticipate higher costs than that? So we requested they go back and look at a more conservative estimate of what that would be. And that would be a second staff member that we would have to add. And their expense estimate came back at $428,000. So even with a more conservative estimate on our expenses, the net revenue on a 4-sheet of ice would be about $110,000. Okay. So in one scenario, that would be 1 full-time staff member in a baseline, and it would be 2 full-time staff members under the more conservative estimate, and then our part-time staff. So we really wanted to ensure that we didn't just take a baseline approach. We wanted to ensure what would that be in a more conservative fashion as well. And under both of those models, there would be a net revenue. Okay, thank you.
I have a follow-up question, please. Currently, Braemar runs at a deficit. With this new plan and with your revenue coming in, how much of a deficit do you expect the arena will be running?
That's another great question. I'm not sure if most people know, but by design, Braemar Arena runs at a deficit. And that is to try to keep additional access to the youth of the community, to our programs. And that deficit is covered by the profits from the Edina liquor store. So that is a very important tie-in to the values of the City of Edina, and what we do with the Edina liquor store profits is to put those back in, and Braemar Arena is one of those recipients. That would reduce the reliance on Edina liquor profits by, again, depending on where those estimates fall, from anywhere it would reduce down to $240,000 or another $110,000. So when Ballard King kind of did those projections for us, that would lower our operating loss anywhere from that $300,000 to $350,000 per year.
And if we do lower that operating loss on an annual basis, the liquor revenues that are in play could be redeployed to somewhere else.
That is a really good way to say that.
Okay. Thanks. Any other questions? Okay. Well, we'll give a little time, I think. So when we think about a building of this nature, Perry, how long does it take to build a building this big? Is it a couple of months? Is it a couple of years? How long does it take to do? Just what would you guess?
That's a great question, Scott. This is a little bit more complex than maybe what we do in our own home sense, which is how long does it take to remodel my kitchen or to plan an addition? And I think it always is, it's too long. Yeah. I think right now we are really excited about the opportunity that this could bring. As I mentioned earlier, with the approval of the phase 1, there's money to upgrade the capital improvement side of things. This would really give us that holistic way to look at an expansion. So redundant systems, sharing of services within, greater sustainability, much more high efficient operations that we could put back into the arena in that sense. But with that comes disruption. And that would be about disruption planning. So depending on which way we go, this could be anywhere from that year to 18 months of renovation. Depending if it's an expansion, that could anywhere be from 18 to 24, maybe even 30 months. Okay. That's a big impact to a lot of our users as well. As I indicated, kind of that key word for us is disruption planning. Yeah. We would re-engage no matter what the results here before we started on that adventure, and talk it through with our users and find out how best we can serve their needs while we go through this remodel.
Okay. Great. Thanks for that explanation. Anything? Okay. Well, I think that's all we have for tonight then. As a reminder, you can continue to ask questions about the proposed expansion of Braemar Arena or the referendum online at bettertogetheredina.org for the next week. The online conversation closes on Tuesday, August 29th. Our next Town Talk will be held at 7 p.m. on Thursday, October 5th. Fire Chief Andrew Slamo will join us to talk about fire department operations. Please join us then. Thank you, and have a great night.